Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot here with Kim Strassel and Kyle Peterson. We're talking about the Wednesday presidential debate, first big Republican debate, and they're going to be the following on stage as far as we know. Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor, Mike Pence, former VP, Christie, Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina. And it looks like Asa Hutchinson will also, he says he's qualified. We'll see if the RNC lets him on. He's the former governor of Arkansas. So if Donald Trump doesn't show that looks to be the lineup, there might be some last-minute changes. Let's listen to two highest in the polls, other than Donald Trump, and how they've responded to the debate. Let's hear Vivek Ramaswamy first.
There's going to be many debates through the fall. There's going to be one in September, one in October. So if he shows up on the debate stage at some point over the course of this year, from then onward, I'm okay with it. The truth is he's been on that debate stage many times. He's been president for 4 years. For me, no one in this country even knew who I was 6 months ago. And so I'm looking forward to introducing myself to the people. I think Donald Trump is free to make whatever decision he feels is right for him for the first couple of debates. But for me, I'm going to be delivering my message either way.
I think everyone should debate. If you qualify, I think you owe it to the people to put out your vision, to talk about your record, answer questions about your record and decisions that you may have made or not made. And if you're not willing to do that, then I think that people are not going to look kindly on that.
We have those two reactions. DeSantis wanting everybody there. Vivek Ramaswamy saying, well, I'll give Trump a pass. Now, I should say that isn't what Vivek Ramaswamy was saying about 2-3 months ago in private. He was saying, I'm not going to let Donald Trump get away with not showing up. But now he is. And I guess that fits with Ramaswamy's strategy of not criticizing Trump, kind of talking around and over Trump if he can. Ron DeSantis, though, really does want the contrast on stage, I think. He wants to show he can handle the issues better than Trump, and I think he wants to take Trump on about specific subjects like the pandemic, the lockdowns, and contrast his Florida record with Trump's. Now he'll have to do that without Trump there on stage as a foil.
And the challenge is you're going to get several different approaches to Donald Trump, I think. The one from Christie is clear. He is the Trump attack dog. He's going to go after Trump on being indicted 4 times on January 6th. That's where you may see some of these other candidates try to say, well, these are political prosecutions and stuff like that, because they know that that's where the bulk of many Republican voters are. And they want to be able to make those contrasts on policy, COVID policy, for example, while not taking up what some Republican voters would see as, talking points from the mainstream media, as it were. So you may have some people try to hedge. You may have some of these guys who are trying to keep their options open to have a cabinet post in a second Trump administration if we end up getting there. And then you have people who just try to pivot too. I expect that from some of these guys who have a low name ID. The whole point of getting on the debate stage to them is to make an introduction to voters. So you may have a question thrown to North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, for instance, about Trump's indictment, whatnot, and he may say, that's not why I'm here. I want to talk about what we did about energy policy and so forth. And so there will be, I think, a variety of approaches to Donald Trump on the stage, and that could be one of the things that keeps it interesting.
How they approach Trump will be really interesting. The Martha McCallum and Brett Baer have said that they're going to have tape of things that Trump has said, reactions to Trump. Maybe they'll have a comment from or a tape from one or more of the prosecutors who've indicted Trump. Kim, I wonder if the strategy that Kyle laid out, which is to duck that kind of a question if it's asked about, well, what do you think about the indictment, and just say, well, I'm not here to talk about Trump. I'm here to talk about what I believe in. Is that going to work?
I think that's going to be tough to pull off. Look, if you're very talented, Vivek Ramaswamy is very good at that sort of thing. If you listen to that statement that we just played, he's a little critical, like, Donald Trump has an obligation at some point to come on. But then he had the little thing, well, he's had to answer a lot of questions already. I mean, some people are good at that, but just outright ducking it, I think, will be tough. we were talking about Ron DeSantis and how you were suggesting that he'd really like to have that contrast. Here's the other reason he'd like to have Donald Trump on the stage is because, and I think this gets to the point about attacks on Trump, is that if Donald Trump isn't on the stage, whenever you have a debate like this, somebody is going to be the punching bag. And everybody's going to be gunning for Ron DeSantis in the absence of Donald Trump. Because he right now is polling ahead of everyone else. Everybody wants to be the last man standing in the end to run against Trump. So they're going to want to take him out. And I think that one thing you might therefore see happening is even as the debate moderators are teeing up moments for people to talk about Trump's history, his actions, or his problems, people are going to be more inclined to somehow ignore that and pivot and go after Ron DeSantis on stage.
Yeah, I think when Christie was in to see us, he didn't say this explicitly, but it sure sounded by some of his answers that he was going to be fully prepared to take on DeSantis. He doesn't have a high regard, and he was saying this on the record, by the way. He doesn't have a high regard for DeSantis. He thinks that he's had a rollover legislature in Florida. He said that explicitly. He thinks that he had a rollover press corps that wasn't tough. He thinks that DeSantis is used to talking to friendly media only. Of course, DeSantis has changed that recently. I think he thinks he's got a glass jaw, and he's going to try to break that glass jaw, Kyle. Now, I also think that Vivek Ramaswamy is likely to be a target from some of the candidates because he's emerged here to be tied in a couple of polls with DeSantis for second place. And you can see somebody like Mike Pence, you could see Nikki Haley, you could see some others go after Ramaswamy, particularly for some of his foreign policy positions of late, where he sounds Trumpian on Ukraine and has said recently, for example, that, well, we'll defend Taiwan until 2028, and then if China gets out of the Western Hemisphere, well, we'll get out of defending Taiwan. Nothing like giving Xi Jinping a date certain with which to launch that naval landing.
Yes, but that again, I agree with Kim that Trump skipping the debate is a real risk. But that again is part of his strategy, is this is exactly what he wants. And it's useful to remember back in 2016 how small the pluralities were that Trump was winning some of these early states with 30%, 33% of the vote. And that is, I think, the same dynamic that he wants to duplicate in 2020, where you have a lot of candidates in single digits, candidates winning different states. So there's no one challenger that gets a head-to-head lineup with Donald Trump. And that is the risk here. In Iowa, Ron DeSantis is still the man in number 2. But in one recent poll, he had been passed in New Hampshire by Christie. And then you have South Carolina coming next. And there's likely to be a strong performance there by the home team, Nikki Haley, former governor, Tim Scott, current senator. And they will be very reluctant, I think, to drop out before posting success in South Carolina, however they want to define that. And so that, I think, again, is part of Trump's calculus in skipping this debate, is it's better for him if by not being at the debate, he is not the one that is drawing the pile-on. It's better if Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy duke it out a little bit. And if some of these other guys get some name ID and get a boost in the polls, maybe instead of 2%, they're at 5%. That just makes the plurality strategy easier for Trump when the voting actually starts early next year.
Yeah, Kyle, it sounds like you think this is a genius strategy by Trump. I don't know. I still think there's a danger that this will give another chance for somebody to emerge. Of course, the history of these debates is that more likely finishes off some candidates than launches them. Thinking Scott Walker in 2016, the former Wisconsin governor, Tim Pawlenty, former Minnesota governor in 2024. So it can really hurt somebody if they don't do well. But on the other hand, if somebody breaks out, Kim, and you're going to get this is the last question. If somebody breaks out, there's going to be a lot of pressure to this time by Republicans to winnow the field early and to get that emerging that one person who can take on Donald Trump, because otherwise there's, based on the plurality calculations that Kyle laid out, you're not going to be able to beat him.
The dynamics this time around are different, which is why I also think that Donald Trump is taking a little bit more of a risk here. Republicans blindly lumbered into 2016 and just kept assuming that Donald Trump would implode. And by the time they realized what had happened with this whole dividing of the rest of the vote, it was too late. everybody understands at this time. And don't underestimate, look, if you're a donor who's supporting Asa Hutchinson or Nikki Haley or Tim Scott, you are already a person who doesn't want Donald Trump to win. And if your candidate isn't making it in the end, they're also going to be putting pressure on these folks to get out, because I think that the importance to GOP people of winning is still paramount in their minds rather than their particular horse they're backing at the moment. I'd also just note that some of the dynamics are a little bit different now, too, in other regards. This was a point Chris Christie made when he came in with us. But, back in 2016, there were 18 candidates, I think, who were all up on the stage. As mentioned by you, I think we have 10 who have qualified for the debate this week. So there isn't going to be like a main stage and then a kiddie table like you had last time. There are fewer people that you're going to have to get out in the end. That could also play into this scenario as well, too. But things are different than they were in 2016, and we should always keep that in mind.
All right, it's going to be fun to watch. We'll be paying attention Wednesday night, and certainly we'll comment on Thursday. So we're here every day on Potomac Watch. Thanks for listening, and see you tomorrow.